I want to go ahead and introduce, though, our featured speaker today, Nick Myers. And Nick is the co-founder and CEO of Red Fox AI in Madison, Wisconsin. Red Fox AI is an a voice technology startup that helps biotech and life science organizations that offer consumer at-home medical testing products leverage their innovative power of conversational AI. Nick is a TEDx and international keynote speaker, having spoken at events and conferences across the United States and the world on topics ranging from AI to the future of work. AI and the future of work, AI and the future of social media, and how brands can effectively use voice technologies like Alexa, Google Assistant to enhance their marketing and customer engagement strategy. Nick has been featured in publications like PR Daily, In Business Madison, and the Journal of Digital and Social Media Marketing. In 2019, Red Fox AI was recognized as a 50 on fire company in the state of Wisconsin by Wisconsin Inno. Nick is an In Business Madison 40 under 40 honoree and was nominated as Voice Commentator of the Year at the 2019 Project Voice Awards. He also happens to be my neighbor here at DreamBank upstairs at Starting Block Madison. Without further ado, though, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Nick. Nick, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Andy, for that awesome intro. I'm really excited to be back giving a talk at DreamBank. Hang on, give me one sec. My headphones are acting up. One sec. You never know what's going to happen in a Zoom meeting, folks. Anyhow, really excited to be here at DreamBank again, giving a bit of a different talk than I have in the past. Of course, having been lucky enough to present at DreamBank over, the last several years that I've been growing my company, a lot of it, of course, has always been focused on technology and what we're working on. But this specific talk is really just going to be focusing on what I like to call, so you want to start a business. And I'm just going to preface this by saying I am by no means an expert in starting a business. Really, this talk is just going to be from the lessons that I've learned just really in the last few years of trying to grow a startup. And it has truthfully been one of the most fun things I have done in my life. But in many ways, it has also been one of the most stressful things I have done in my life. And it really comes down to being a balancing act, right? As with most things. But I can assume that everybody attending this talk today has some interest in wanting to start a business. Maybe you're thinking about it, you haven't made the leap yet. Maybe you're in the process of starting your business. Whatever level you may be at, I've really designed this talk to just give you a bunch of tips and tricks and really tactile information to help make you successful, regardless of the stage that you're at in starting your business. So with that out of the way, without further ado, let's kick things off here by me just diving into my story so far. So in 2022, I still will be honest in saying I never expected to be running my own company, never in a million years. In fact, growing up, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and, a working class family. We weren't rich by any means, but, luckily my mom always made sure that I had everything I needed. I definitely got way more in terms of video games and Legos and everything growing up than I probably should have. But I was never brought up in a family that everybody was a business owner or entrepreneur or looking to do those types of things. Really, the only connection I have in my family is I had a great uncle who unfortunately passed in 2003. He started a grease collection business here in Madison, actually sold that in the late 90s and was very successful in doing that. But he is really the only quote unquote entrepreneur that I've had in my family. And unfortunately, I did not get to know him as well as I could have, but I never was really brought up in a family of entrepreneurs or business-minded people. And then, of course, I went through college at UW-Stevens Point and entered wanting to be a doctor, and that did not pan out the way I wanted. Ultimately joined the communication program there and learned I had a lot of skills with public speaking, marketing, and project management. So after graduating college in 2016, I was lucky enough to have a job already lined up at a national transportation company called Sheehy Mail Contractors, which was an excellent first job to have out of college. I was able to flex my marketing skills immediately, leveled up very quickly in the company, built them a social media marketing program. So it was an incredibly good experience, and I'm still friends with those owners today of that company. But also, shortly after I started my job, I'll never forget this. I was just on a walk. It was a really stressful day. And it just hit me that I'm not going to be able to work for somebody else for the rest of my life. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I really pondered on that for a few weeks before I really decided to act on that. So after I thought through that a bit more, I approached my best friend, and he and I had always joked around wanting to start a business. In fact, one of the summers during college, we tried to start a t-shirt printing business that didn't really work out the way we wanted it to, more from us just not really caring about it. But even so, he and I had always talked about starting a business and wanting to do something. So I approached Brett, is his name, who's actually our CTO and co-founder of Red Fox today. And I said, I really want to start a business, but I don't know what I want to do. So we really took stock of what we were good at. And, I had skills in digital marketing and was doing this for a company. I'm like, I'd really like to do that for other companies as well. But of course, even in 2016, 2017, the digital marketing market in Madison was very saturated, as it just is in general. There's a lot of digital marketing agencies. So how could we really stand out? So ultimately, we settled on virtual reality was something we wanted to bring into digital marketing. Even though the doctor did not pan out like I wanted it to, I look back on my upbringing. I was always I always loved technology. I built computers. I taught myself basic programming growing up. So I always knew I wanted to do something in technology to complement my skills in digital marketing. So we decided to start Red Fox Creative, which was the first iteration of the company focusing on digital marketing and virtual reality. And you can see here, of course, I have this collage of pictures, which kind of tells the story of Red Fox Creative all the way up to Red Fox AI and what we're doing now. But that's really how we got started, was digital marketing with a focus on virtual reality. So ultimately, we did that for about a year, got some local customers. We actually bought a 360 video camera, learned how to film virtual reality videos. I mean, this was like early VR, and VR is still early, but this is like OG virtual reality we were trying to do stuff with. And of course, as we were doing this, it just was not taking off like a lot of the market research had showed us. And we ultimately had to decide what to do next. For just various reasons, Brett decided to exit the business, and I was left with the digital marketing customers. So now we're in 2018. I also was trying to become a speaker during this time on just, what I was doing with digital marketing. And of course, also at the same time, I was really trying to figure out what to do with Red Fox. And I had an experience in late 2017 with Amazon Alexa for the first time. And this is a story I love telling. So really what got us into voice technology is in holiday 2017, my mom had decided to gift me with an Amazon Echo device with Amazon Alexa. Of course, I had seen these on TV. I thought they were a gimmick. I really didn't know what to do with it once I brought it back home. And then it was a really, really cold, I'll never forget it, one of those negative 20 something degree wind chill days that we have here in Madison in January of 2018. And I'm sitting in my apartment. I have Alexa set up on my kitchen counter, and I'm in my bathroom, and it hits me that I'm running really low on toilet paper. So I look outside and I'm like, there is no way I'm going outside just for toilet paper. Just funny now, given everything that happened with COVID. But anyhow, I pulled up my phone, was like, I could order it on Amazon. And then just for a split second, I thought to myself, I wonder if that thing on my kitchen counter can order me toilet paper. So I said, Alexa, I need toilet paper. And in less than 30 seconds, Alexa had recommended me a 12-pack of Cottonelle for $5.36 because it was discounted. I'll never forget the price, and shipped it to my doorstep in less than 24 hours. So that's when the light bulb went off in my head that there is something here. There has to be a way to leverage this technology for businesses and to improve people's lives. So really, then I just dove headfirst into trying to understand artificial intelligence, and it just fascinated me. I kept going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, just started reading white papers, books. I had some friends at Microsoft at the time who were giving me resources, took courses on AI through Amazon and Microsoft, and really just couldn't get enough of it. And ultimately started peeling apart the voice technology aspect of that and how it could be leveraged for business. And Because of that curiosity with AI, I switched what I was talking about as a speaker to really just the future of artificial intelligence, how this technology can be used to improve our lives, the future of work, which was something I very much enjoyed learning about, and actually was able to make some predictions that in a very weird way came true during the pandemic. But that's really how I grew my speaking career in 2019. Also in 2019, we decided to completely change the direction of the company to focusing solely on voice technology and change the name to Red Fox AI. And it was that led me to Australia to go and give a talk at a international social media conference on voice technology and artificial intelligence. It led me to Bangkok, Thailand to talk about artificial intelligence and voice technology and real estate. It led us to where we're at now, where even during the pandemic and having to completely pivot the business once again to focus away from Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant to us now working in Starting Block, which, by the way, I remember the day that Starting Block opened, and I was just so jealous of the people that got to work in the American Family Building and in Starting Block. And I said to myself, we are going to have an office in there one day. And lo and behold, in 2021, we were able to do that. And ultimately now shifting to what we're focusing on with biotechnology and life sciences, having built our own voice assistant platform that we call VLab to help facilitate at-home medical testing and improve customer support for at-home medical testing. So that's my story so far, and it's been a really incredible journey. It's only just getting started. There is so much more on the horizon, but I really just wanted to share that with you, to put into perspective that one tiny decision to start a business or start something that you're really, really passionate about can change the rest of your life. And with that being said, I want to dive into the nuts and bolts of starting a business now, right? So I've really put a lot of thought into this, and it came down to you need to ask yourself before you start your business, or again, even if you're in the process of getting it started, what 3 questions are the most important? I boiled it down to 3 questions because it's very easy to say, I want to start a business, right? Anybody can say, I want to start a business. But you need to ask yourself these 3 very important questions that I'm going to get to in a moment. And when you think about starting a business, if you're somebody who is really just in the idea formation stages of this, don't think that you have to go and build the world's next multinational company, right? Everything starts small. A business can be as small as a part-time side hustle, which is really what Red Fox was when we first started, or ultimately it can at some point be as large as a multinational corporation. But before you start your business, you have to ask yourself these 3 questions, and we're going to pick each one apart here over the next several minutes. So the first question, and what I view to be the most important question out of the 3, you need to ask yourself, why do you want to start a business? Get to the root of why you want to do this. And really, there is no one right or wrong answer, but there has to be a compelling reason that generates an intrinsic motivation. I will tell you right now, if the only reason you want to start a business is to make more money, that's a good reason, but you're gonna maybe need a bit more than that to get you through the really, really tough times that come along with starting a business. Really ask yourself why you want to start a business and commit to that. One thing that I know we did, as I told my story here, that I did often, and I was constantly just write things on a whiteboard, trying to validate why I wanted to do this and why we were doing this. Because when you finally figure that out, that sets your motivation moving forward, and you can draw back onto that reason in the tough times. When things are looking really bad in those moments, you can always fall back on what that core reason you want to start a business is. And there really is a laundry list of reasons why people start businesses, right? I mean, side hustle, we've heard a lot about that over the last few years. Maybe it's just earning extra income. Maybe it's a hobby, that you really want to spend more time on that can turn into a business. If there's this passion project that you've been working on, or in general, just this passion that you have that you aren't working on in your full-time job, or something that you've always wanted to do, there is a laundry list of reasons. And it's sometimes these small reasons for starting a business that influence the final outcome, right? Let's look at a few examples quickly. Amazon, right? The behemoth of the company that we know today All Jeff Bezos wanted to do was sell things online, specifically books. That was it. And now they're one of the world's largest companies in e-commerce. Another example is Wordle, which has really just taken the country by storm here over the last several weeks. Wordle, the creator of Wordle, really just enjoyed word games. His partner enjoyed word games, and he just wanted to make a really fun word game for his partner. Now it was just purchased by the New York Times for, I think, like $12 million or something like that. Don't quote me on that number, but it was for millions of dollars. Another example is Spanx, right? Sarah Blakely's company. All she wanted was her and her friends to look good when they wore form-fitting clothing. And now she's one of the world's youngest billionaires, women billionaires, mind you, just because she wanted her friends to look good. So anything small can at some point has the opportunity to translate into something much larger. And talking to many different business owners, and my time being one myself, everybody has an idea of how to improve or do something for themselves. It really is kind of selfish in a way. And I don't mean to say that negatively, but it's true. Usually when people start a business, or at least the people I've talked to, myself included, we have an idea of how we want to improve something for ourselves. But as a byproduct, the product we create or the service we start also serves everybody else who has the same problem. That really is it. It's really an intrinsically motivated thing. You're trying to solve something for yourself that millions of other people potentially also just have a problem with. And that turns into some of these really large companies that I just mentioned. So with question one out of the way, the second question is, how are you going to fund your business? It's one thing to have the great idea. It's one thing to know the problem that you're going to solve, but how are you going to fund that business? Because if you don't have a way to fund your business, it probably won't happen. And unfortunately, a lot of people who are considering starting businesses think that they need to be independently wealthy or have millions of dollars in the bank to start a business. That is wrong. You can start a business with $1, truthfully, if you wanted to. You just have to invest that dollar the right way. And maybe being a bit facetious, but it's true. You don't need to be independently wealthy or have millions of dollars to start a business. You just need enough to cover your startup costs, whatever those may be. And the good news is that in 2022, there are many different ways to fund your business. There really are. We are truthfully living in a great time to access funds to start a business. And that's why we're seeing such an explosion in side hustles and people doing more freelance work, because there are so many different ways to fund that, to get it up and running. So here are some of the most common ways that people fund businesses in 2022, I should say the avenues that are readily available to fund a business. The first is bootstrapping. So bootstrapping essentially is what it sounds like. You're using your own money to fund your business, or what a lot of people do too, especially in young tech startups, is they start with friends and family. So they go to various friends, go to various family, and raise money and bootstrap that way. Today, in 2022, even though we've been around since 2019, we are still bootstrapping Red Fox because we still maintain that digital marketing arm of the company that generates cash flow for us to do this. We don't have any outside capital yet. That is something we want to do, but we're still bootstrapped. We're putting our own money into the business to keep it going. So that really is one of the easiest and most immediate ways for you to get your business started. The second is crowdfunding. So really just raising money from anyone who believes your idea and your business. Kickstarter is a platform that allows anybody to crowdfund for a new product or service. In fact, Oculus, the headsets that Facebook bought that company a couple of years ago and now sells the Oculus Quest headsets. Oculus was a Kickstarter funded company. They were crowdfunded because people believed in the possibilities of virtual reality. So even though they had no stake in it whatsoever, they just wanted to experience the product. So they gave money to Oculus to develop that product. That is crowdfunding, and that's another relatively easy way to raise some money to get your business started. The third, and one of the most common ways, specifically when it comes to small businesses, can be somewhat difficult, but the barrier to entry has been lowered significantly, and that's through loans, right? So that's either getting a loan from a bank, using the Small Business Administration, get a loan through the SBA. I mean, even some people use credit cards, right? I mean, why would you ever use a credit card? But depending on the interest rate of the card, some business owners use that to get everything up and running. The only thing, of course, I will say is if you're going to go the loan route is, of course, you need to have a good credit score. And actually, that's a benefit because if you tried to start a small business in the 1930s or 1940s, banks really had a hard time lending money because collateral was so different. Right now, we have the credit score that is, almost that collateral. So it can be a bit challenging to get a loan, but it really just all depends on, the bank you choose to get the loan from. The SBA does make it very easy. Most small and large banks are SBA lenders. So getting a loan is an avenue for you to raise funds for your business. Then we have angel investors, which is definitely more challenging than getting a loan, but not impossible. So an angel investor is essentially somebody who is independently wealthy or grew a business themselves and has extra money to play with. They're usually one or two people. You have angel investment firms, but more often than not, it's a single person or two people who just have access to a lot of capital and are looking for ways to invest that, typically within businesses. So there are various different websites out there that you can go and find angel investors. There's definitely a handful of different groups around Madison to get connected with people who are angel investors. Like I said, it's definitely a bit more challenging because you still have to pitch to this person and get buy-in, but it is a really solid way to raise money for your business, depending on what you want to do. And then, of course, the last way here, which is by far the most difficult, but yields the most capital, is a venture capital route, right? So especially when you talk about a technology startup that wants high growth and wants to scale quickly, that's when you go into a venture capital fundraise and you approach a VC firm and you essentially pitch, and there's founders and business startups who do this hundreds of times before getting a yes, right? And it takes the most time, it takes the most work, it takes the most time. However, this typically results in large sums of capital, millions of dollars that you can raise from venture capital firms. Of course, they take a portion of your company as well, but the resources you get in return from that can be quite substantial when you're looking to start your business or startup. So that's just a quick overview of some of the different ways that you can fund your business in 2022. So next here we have startup costs, right? So what are some of the most common startup costs that you're going to have to face when starting your business, right? And these will vary for every single person or every single business, depending on the type of business you want to start. So consider these averages, but they're pretty average across the board. So, I chose to break these down into one-time, monthly, and annual startup costs. So, really when you look at one-time startup costs, you're looking at equipment. If you're a small business, say, for example, you're a bakery, right? You're going to need to invest in equipment to operate your bakery, which, can range anywhere from as little as $10,000 on average, all the way up to $125,000, depending on the type of equipment you need to purchase. And then usually another one-time fee is incorporation fees. So, registering your business as a limited liability company with the state, or maybe, you have access to a lot of capital and you want to incorporate right away, you're going to have to pay those incorporation fees typically to the government to get everything registered, which usually is a one-time fee when it is all said and done. Then you have your monthly costs, which of course are the largest chunk of all this. So of course, number one on that list is payroll. So, if you're starting a side hustle or if you're doing a small business that doesn't necessarily need employees, you won't have to worry about this. But, as you grow, which, for a lot of people when they start a small business is the goal, you're going to have to deal with payroll, which is typically a quarter to 50% of your total budget. So payroll is definitely something to keep in mind. Inventory, right? So say maybe you're starting a small e-commerce company, you're going to need to invest in inventory to have that on hand. That typically will be anywhere from 17% to 25% of your total budget. So you'll need to account for that. Office space, which may not be as much of a concern in 2022 because of the pandemic where remote working has become a norm. But, in our case, we still pay money every month to have an office space and starting block just because we like having that. But on average, depending on what you want to do, you can look to spend anywhere from $100 all the way up to $1,000 per employee per month for office space. Then there's marketing, right? You need to communicate to everybody what exactly you're doing so you can get business. In the initial stages of forming your company, that typically is under 10% of your total budget. You would think it'd be more, but the average really is under 10% when it comes to total monthly expenses for your business. A website, right? A website, you just got to have it. I mean, that's the number one place people go to when they're researching your business. That typically ranges about $40 a month, depending if you're using one of the do-it-yourself platforms like Wix or Squarespace or WordPress.com. So you can expect to pay roughly that per month. And then of course, utilities, which applies to more if you have a physical office space. But again, even if you have a work from home office space, that still counts. So you can average about $2 per square foot of office space and utilities expenses per month. And then annually, insurance. You have to have business insurance. I'll get to that in a bit, but insurance will run you about $1.2 thousand per year, again, depending on the type of policy you get, but that is the average. And then of course, taxes, right? Which changes depending on the type of business entity you are, which I will also get into in a bit, but keep in mind, the corporate tax rate is currently at 21%. So you're going to need to account for that. And then any travel expenses, which are going to be variable depending on what you do in a given year. So there really is no average for that, but I would definitely say average 10 to 30% of your total budget from the year on travel, depending on how often you're going to be needing to travel. So that's just a quick overview of startup costs that you can and should anticipate. So then we get into the final question here that I want to go over, and that is, what is my business going to do? What is your business going to do? So you have the reason for doing it and the why. You have how you're going to fund it. So now what are you actually going to do? So, you really have to decide, are you going to build a new product? Are you going to offer a service? Multiple different things you can do. And keep in mind as well, starting a new business doesn't always mean you have to create something new, right? I mean, for example, look at how many different tax prep softwares there are. You have TurboTax, you have, I can't think of another one off the top of my head, but you all know the Credit Karma. There's a handful of different tax softwares out there that you can choose from to do taxes, or maybe a service like digital marketing. In the Madison area alone, I mean, we have dozens of different digital marketing companies. So you can do something that's already out there. The hard part is you have to figure out what is it that you do that's different from everyone else, how you sell that. So you can go, I'm going to build a brand new product or service that has never been done before because I see there's a problem that we can solve with it. Or I'm just going to do something that I'm really passionate about that other people are already doing. I just have to do it differently and I just have to do it better. But really, at the end of the day, it comes down to deciding what is your business actually going to do, specifically, finding out who you're going to do it for as well, which we'll get into in a moment. So some more nuts and bolts we're going to get into here. Build a business plan. So when you see the word business plan, I know this was me when I first saw the word business plan. It sounds overwhelming right off the bat, but it can actually be quite simple. Building a business plan doesn't need to be overly complicated. Think of your business plan as your guide and expect it to change over time. Just because your business plan is one way in 2022 doesn't mean your business plan is going to be the same way in 2025. Allow it to change over time, and it will change over time. But at the end of the day, it is your guide when you get started. A metaphor that I like to use for this is, imagine you're on a hike and you approach a forest that you've never been to before. It's a lot easier to navigate that forest when you have a guide versus going into it blindly, right? Your business plan is your guide. So in your business plan, there's a million and one different ways to do it. There's templates out there, but the way I see it is, in your business plan, you need to include just a few core things. The first is identifying your unique selling proposition. What makes you different from everybody else out there, regardless of whether you're building a new product, starting a new service, or whether you're going to build upon an existing product or build upon an existing service. You need to identify that unique selling proposition and what makes you stand out. Second, you need to identify your market. Who exactly are you selling to? We've been there where we've tried to sell to everybody. Bit of advice, it doesn't work. The more specific you can be, the better off you're going to be and the more success you're going to have with your product, with your service, when you identify your market to a T. Third, your sales and go-to-market strategy. You need to sell your product or service, right? It's not going to sell itself. If we build it, they will come does not apply as much as we want to think it does. But you need to identify your sales. You need to identify how you're going to go to market with your business. Again, you need to do that for a pie shop all the way up to a tech company and a software, a tech company that builds software. You need to identify sales and how you're going to go to market and how you're going to reach those people in that market. And then, of course, lastly, how much do you expect to grow over a period of time? And roughly forecasting This is where I want to be in 6 months. This is where I want to be in a year. This is where I want to be in 3 years. You know, identifying those goals early on will help you be more successful to reach those goals, because you know that's how much you want to grow within that given period of time. So identifying all of these things in your business plan is going to create a really solid guide and help make you that much more successful as you get things going. So business entities, right? This is something that nobody taught me. By the way, I'm going to preface this slide right here. Nobody taught me about this. And I wish somebody would have taught me about this. So I am going to give you my high level, what I've learned on the different types of business entities that are out there. Because when we started Red Fox, I just thought it was as simple as, oh, I'm a business, I'm going to make money. No, there's a lot of legal stuff. There's a lot of tax stuff that unfortunately doesn't get taught super effectively in the United States. I would love for that to change. So it really is a lot of learning on your own. But when it comes to business entities, there are really 3-4 main business entities that you can choose from in the US. The first one is a sole proprietorship. So a sole proprietorship is actually the most common type of business in the United States. Roughly 73.1% of businesses in the US are sole proprietorships. And essentially what a sole proprietorship is, it means you're unincorporated with one owner. So it's just like me saying, I'm Nick Myers, I offer digital marketing services. Sure, you can form a name to that, but at the end of the day, the business is you are the business. There is no legal separation between the business and you are one and the same, which being a sole proprietor offers you a lot of flexibility, but that also means you are solely responsible for the business debts and legal obligations. So if for any reason you're serving a customer, you're serving you're serving a customer, you're serving somebody within your market, and they decide to sue you for any reason, everything you own and every bit of money you've collected through your business is liable in that lawsuit. So again, a sole proprietorship, it's really easy to get up and running and get started, but there is really no legal protection for you as a business owner in that. So again, mind you, all these have positives and negatives, but I'm just going to be transparent in what those are. And when it comes to taxation for a sole proprietorship, it's pass through, right? So all of the money that you earn from the business, you just claim as income on your personal tax return, and you get taxed accordingly to the income tax rate. Of course, you also have to pay FICA, you have to pay Social Security and Medicaid on top of that as well. So you actually get taxed quite a bit as a sole proprietor. But again, positives and negatives to it, just giving you that information so you have it. The second most common type of business entity in the US, I shouldn't even say most common, is a limited liability company, or an LLC. And really what an LLC is, it's a separate legal entity created under state law. So unlike a sole proprietorship where you are the business is you are the member or owner of the business, and the business is its own separate legal entity, meaning that if somebody decides to sue you or you obtain any debt for the business, that is all under the business. You have nothing to do with that. You are protected from that liability through an LLC. And really, this gives a lot of flexibility for business owners, because you don't have to worry about your own personal finances getting mixed with the business. If God forbid anything were to happen, you have that protection being a limited liability company. And the beautiful thing about a limited liability company is you can be a sole proprietorship, you can be a partnership, or you can even be a corporation as an LLC as well. The thing with LLCs is they're still pass through taxation. So any income that the business itself makes, you still have to funnel that through your personal income tax return and taxed appropriately according to those rates. Also with an LLC, you are now a member. So you can decide, if you're a sole proprietorship LLC, you own 100% of the company. Or if you have a partner, you own maybe 70%, your partner owns 30%. Or if you have multiple members, you can decide who gets what ownership percentage. So you get a greater degree of flexibility by treating the business as a separate entity with a limited liability company versus a sole proprietorship. And then, of course, the last most common type of business entity in the US is a C Corp. So, this is where we get into all of your very large companies, very large corporations are all identified as a C Corp business entity. So like an LLC, the business, well, I shouldn't say that. Forget I just said that. So I should say, like an LLC, there is limited liability, right? Because the business is its own separate entity. So you as the owner or the shareholder are not liable for any of the debts or obligations of the business. That is treated completely separate. However, a C Corp is not passed through taxation, meaning any income the business earns is not passed through your personal income. It is taxed completely separate, and that's the 21% corporate tax rate. So as a C Corp, the business itself is taxed separately. And then, of course, if you are an employee of that business, you get a W-2 and all that. I won't get into that. That's for someone way smarter than me. But just to kind of give you a high level of how a C Corp is looked at from a tax standpoint and a liability standpoint. So, of course, there are a lot more regulations that also come with the C Corp. You're required to hold annual meetings and have a board of directors, and you have to be incredibly transparent, right? You need a set of bylaws, annual reports, financial statements. Again, unless you plan on becoming, a really large company, I wouldn't recommend rushing to become a C Corp. Most small businesses and startups start out as a limited liability company. And of course, maybe if you're just trying to build a side hustle, a sole proprietorship makes sense to you. But these are the three different business entities that are most common within the United States from both a legal and a tax standpoint. And again, I hope this is good information because I was never taught any of this, and I wish I would have gotten a crash course in this a lot sooner. So, with all of that being said, here is what I like to call your forming your business checklist. This is exactly what we did and the same exact steps when we started Red Fox AI. So I'm going to give you that same checklist. So say, you figure out your what, you figure out your funding, you figure out what you're going to do, you choose your business entity. Great. What are the next steps? Well, step number one is you got to choose a name, right? So the advice I can give here is don't overthink it. A lot of people I've run into spend several weeks trying to come up with a name for their business. The beautiful thing about a name is what you choose now, you don't always have to stick with. I mean, from a branding standpoint, you probably want to, but at the end of the day, it's flexible. So don't overthink choosing your name, but of course you do have to choose one. Again, you can even choose your own name as your business as well. Easily enough, I could go create an LLC called Nick Myers LLC. So, but you have to choose your name. Step number two is you then have to register your business and that name with the Department of Financial Institutions. For those outside of Wisconsin, every state has their own unique way to register your business. Just because I'm based in Wisconsin, I will speak to how Wisconsin does this, and it is through the Department of Financial Institutions, or DFI. You can go to the DFI's website, do a business lookup, and make sure that your business name doesn't conflict with any other business names, and then you register with the Department of Financial Institutions. Again, speaking from the perspective of an LLC, you just have to fill out some paperwork and file what they call articles of incorporation, pay I think it was, I don't remember how much I paid, but it wasn't substantial to get everything filed. I think it was maybe like $99. Don't quote me on that, but you pay that, you file your business with the state. Step number three is, especially if you're an LLC, you need to request an employer identification number from the IRS. So what an employer identification number is, again, it's essentially your tax ID that the IRS has, of course, to associate, your business so it can pay the appropriate taxes. The one thing I've learned here is when you request your employer identification number, only use the IRS website. If it does not say irs.gov, do not request your employer identification number. The first time I went to do this, I just typed in employer identification number into Google. It brought me to a website that looked very much like the IRS's website. And because I was just so excited to get my EIN, I did not pay attention that it wasn't a .gov. I went through the entire process of requesting my EIN, only to be met with a screen at the end that says, pay us $200 to get this done. Red flag went up for me. I looked at the URL and I was like, oh, this isn't the IRS's website. So be very careful of that. Only request your employer identification number from irs.gov, and it is free. You do not have to pay a dime to get that. Step number four, open a business bank account. Very important to separate your business income from your personal finances. You can go to probably any local bank in your area and open a business bank account. There are advantages and disadvantages to using local banks versus national banks. We use Chase as our bank, but that's just because I've been a Chase customer since I was in high school. But you can really choose any business bank to go and open your bank account, but it still is very important you do that to separate your business finances from your personal finances. Being somebody who early on mixed their business finances with their personal finances, I would not recommend doing that. So open a business bank account. Step number 5, purchase business insurance. It may seem like something you know, why do I have to do this right away? Because things happen in ways that we never expect. Even just getting a basic, BOP policy to cover basic liability for your business, just get it. I would highly recommend, maybe your insurance provider for your auto and home offers business insurance. I would check with them. We used a broker. I would also recommend using a broker for business insurance, but make sure you get a business insurance policy. And when you do work with customers, some of them will ask, do you have business insurance? So it's very important that you have that. And then finally, step number 6, which, seems very black and white, but, a lot of people don't, I've encountered, seem to place this at, farther down than they should, and that's building a website. So the good news is it's really easy to do in 2022. There's platforms like Wix and Squarespace and WordPress.com and Webflow that you can use to build a website pretty quick. I'd say for your first website, it doesn't need to be extravagant. Just make sure that people know who you are, your branding's on there, and they can get a pretty quick sense of what you do, right? As you grow your business, you can always make an investment to get a better website. So for your first one, just make sure it covers all the core bases, but you do need a website, and that should be your 6th step after purchasing your business insurance. So, IRS, tips and tricks. Taxes and the IRS are a necessary evil. Yes, I never, ever thought in my life that dealing with the Internal Revenue Service would be so complicated, but it is. And much like the different business entities that are out there, I wish I would have been taught a lot of this earlier. So I am going to fill you in on some of the lessons learned while dealing with the IRS for Red Fox. First and foremost, track your expenses. Every single dollar you spend on something for your business needs to be tracked. Save all the receipts. If you have to question an expense, it probably isn't a business expense. There's a lot of gray area there, but if you have to question the expense you're about to make, asking yourself if it's a business expense, it probably isn't, so don't use business money on it. And make sure to track your expenses and cash flow using a software like QuickBooks Online, Expensify. There's a handful of them out there. I would highly recommend not doing it manually, just because it can get complicated really quick, even for a small business, especially when you start getting multiple customers and money's coming in and out the door at different times of the month. I highly recommend using a online accounting software like QuickBooks or Expensify. With that being said, hire an accountant. And hiring an accountant can get expensive, but there's people out there who do it part-time who are really willing to work with you. And the reason I say this is you may think you know the United States tax code, but you don't. You really don't. As much as I wanted to think I knew how to file taxes the first year I did it without an accountant, I was completely blindsided. One of the single most important investments you will make as a business owner is finding a really good accountant, an accountant you can trust, and an accountant who is very knowledgeable about the tax system. So hire an accountant. Third, pay attention to deadlines. Know the IRS tax filing deadlines inside and out. And I say this because I made the mistake of, when we first started Red Fox Creative, I formed it as a partnership. I did not know that there was a deadline in March that partnership tax returns had to be filed. I did not know that you could get fined hundreds of dollars if you miss that deadline, because it's the IRS, they're so disorganized. But I will tell you what, when it comes to fines and making sure they get their money, they will fine you. And as a matter of fact, Brett, I remember this was probably several months after I filed our partnership tax return after the deadline, checked his mailbox, and he got a letter from the IRS saying, you were past the deadline by this many days, you owe us $700. And of course, at the time, I was like, where are we going to get $700 from for this? I ended up calling the IRS. After waiting on hold for a good hour, I finally got, a really decent person who gave me a lot of information and told me that the IRS offered a one-time abatement program. Of course, I took that, right? But the point being with this story here is, do not file anything past the deadline. You will get fined. They know. They always find out. So make sure you pay attention to deadlines. And then fourth is, patience is a virtue. Filing business taxes takes time. Again, it is a necessary evil of this whole thing, but it takes time. And the IRS will only communicate with you via email. You get emails or phone calls or anybody, they will only communicate with you via email. So, and of course, if you have to call them for anything business tax related, make sure you have a snack on hand or 5, because it can take some time. So I want to reiterate here, I'm not trying to give this information scaring you from starting a business. It's just, this is everything that comes along with it that I really wish I would have known a lot sooner. So with that, get social media. So even with all the current turmoil with social media, your business needs to be on it. You know, if you're a B2B business, so business to business, Facebook and LinkedIn at least. If you're a business to consumer business, Facebook and Instagram at least, but you have to be on social media. If you're somebody who doesn't know social media, find somebody who does. Because when researching your business, people always go to social media after your website. And really, when you think about it, in this day and age, who wants to buy from a business nobody knows about, right? Social media gives a level of trust and credibility to that. Again, everything negative that has happened so far aside, you need to get on social media with your business. After you build your website, that is honestly what you should do next, is build yourself a Facebook page, get on LinkedIn, create an Instagram account, depending on what you're doing, but you have to get on social media. Fail fast and pivot. And this is one of the most important things that I have learned so far in this process. To think that everything will just be sunny and rosy when building your company is a fallacy. You know, you're going to fail. Failure is a part of starting a business, and you will screw up many times. But with that, it really is about how quickly you can recover from that failure and how you can get back up. And you're probably going to have to pivot quite a few times before you land on what works. And that's just the reality of starting a business. But my advice is you fail fast and you pivot fast, and you are going to be set up for an incredible amount of success. You know, I grew up in this, you know, I'm sure we've all seen hustle culture. And, you know, that is something that I really took to heart when starting our company, you know, but hustle culture and constantly needing to be in your business, that is a lie. It actually makes failing that much worse when you constantly think you need to be working on your business. Hustle culture is an absolute lie. You can be flexible with your business, but you don't need to be working on it every second of the day. I think as business owners, a lot of people, myself included, tend to idolize Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Elon Musk, you know, because, you know, regardless of how you feel about them, they are truly incredible people with what they've built. But even they did not work 24/7 on their companies. Even though Elon says he does, he's really full of it. You know, give yourself some flexibility. Don't feel like you have to hustle. Fail fast and pivot is the best advice I can give you. And then, of course, create a strong team. You know, the single most important part of what determines if your business will be successful is creating a strong team. Again, even if you're a side hustle, at some point you may need to invest in somebody to help you with that, you know, somebody to help schedule your meetings, even something as simple as that. But you need to create a strong team. The first people you hire and work with are incredibly important to the future of your business. You know, it is this initial team that you build that is going to set the stage for everything else to come. I am incredibly lucky that we've been able to build a really strong team with, you know, my best friend Brett is our CTO and co-founder, our digital marketing manager, Mabel, our new chief growth officer, Mike. I trust these people with everything that we're doing. And it is because of them that we are even in the spot that we're in. So you need to create a strong team. And with that, accepting that your employees will never work as hard of you and that work as hard as you. That is just a fact. Yes, you know, as founders and business owners, we want to believe that every single person we hire has the same amount of passion. The reality is they don't, and that's okay. But the sooner you accept that they will never work as hard of you, the sooner you can work on creating a better team with that in mind. And there is not a single successful business out there today that did not get to where they are by having a bad team. Every really successful company, those early days, they formed a really strong team, and I advise you to do the same. So with all of that being said, at the end of the day, when starting your company, it is thrilling. It is one of the most exciting things you'll probably ever do in your life, even if it doesn't work out. But have fun and truthfully enjoy the roller coaster. Enjoy every minute of it. I can't tell you how many days have gone by where, one day we're at the top of the hill, shooting for the stars, and the next day, we're underground in the lowest loop. But that's part of it. That's the fun of it. That is the motivation that keeps me personally going. And what I really enjoy about trying to build a company is that roller coaster ride, knowing that not every day is going to be the same. So have fun and enjoy it. As I always end on with all of my talks, please stay hungry, stay foolish, and never ever hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, want some more advice. But thank you, and I hope you enjoyed today's presentation.
Thank you so much for that, Nick. This would be a great opportunity to pass along any questions that you may have for Nick. Lots of ground covered there, Nick, and obviously I understand that a lot of those topics could be expanded upon, and I know you have a pretty diverse background too that has gotten you to this point. If you had to pinpoint at least the first thing that comes to mind for you, just a single-handed piece of advice that has helped you, whether it's a reference, a person that you've connected with, a certain topic, what might you think that would be?
It was advice I was given by a mentor I had, and unfortunately she and I have lost touch over the last few years, but she's a storyteller at Microsoft, and I will always remember this advice is, the sooner you accept that you are never the smartest person in the room, the more successful you will always be with anything you set your mind to. And that just stuck with me. And ever since then, any meeting I have had with anybody, I never, ever, ever assume I am the smartest person in the room. There is always something to learn from somebody else in that room.
Absolutely. We got a question that came in from Deborah. Are there business counselors available to discuss or share a business plan for feedback that you know of?
So business counselors. So I mean, yes, if you go to LinkedIn, there are a million and one different business coaches out there. My advice would be, there's a lot of people out there right now who are business coaches who have never run a business. So be very mindful of that. But yes, I guarantee you in any city in this country, a few quick Google searches will lead you to a solid, business coach or business counsel. I mean, I even think here in Madison, you can get resources by going to the Chamber of Commerce and places like that. So check with them because they typically have resources as well. But if you're going to go the business coach route, just make sure you vet the person entirely before you work with them.
I know that people in our community have had some various success with SCORE, and I know that they're kind of greater.
Yes, SCORE too.
Than just the Dane County area. And then the UW has, I think, the UW Law and Entrepreneurial Clinic. I think they offer some good resources that I think are free or fairly affordable, inexpensive for individuals. So those might be good places to check out as well. Well, Nick, as we kind of, here we go. We've got another question that came in here. Do you have a preference of an angel investor, or does one Google someone? So I think this person might be asking, like, how do you find an angel investor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, yes, Google is one route, but I mean, truthfully, getting to know angel investors just comes from networking. I mean, it really does. So whatever you decide your industry is, based on your product or your service, just start talking with people, and ultimately you will get led to an angel investor. I mean, personally, in the space we're in, I mean, I feel like even over the last several months, we've talked to enough people that, it's become easier to identify who those folks are, but a lot of it just comes from networking, and it's kind of a who knows who. And usually, that comes from just talking with other people. Yes, you can Google angel firms and everything, but it really just comes from networking at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Nick. Couple more moments to go ahead and get in any other additional questions you may have from Nick, for Nick, excuse me. But, here at DreamBank, we really truly believe in the transformative power of dreams and celebrate that our community is made up of fellow fearless dreamers. As we conclude here, Nick, I know I asked a question earlier about kind of the piece of advice that you were given that was really impactful. What's one piece of advice that you have for someone who is actively pursuing a dream right now?
Don't overthink it. Like, I think, especially when it comes to starting a company or starting a business, it's very easy to rabbit hole and start overthinking everything. But being somebody who has suffered from depression and anxiety my whole life, action is the antithesis of anxiety. So don't overthink it. And like Nike says, just do it, truthfully.
Thank you so much for that, Nick. Thank you all for who tuned in today. You know, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. We look forward to continuing to learn and grow and dream together. And you can learn more about upcoming DreamBank events and content designed with your dreams in mind at amfam.com/DreamBank and by connecting with us on our social channels. On behalf of American Family Insurance and DreamBank, we look forward to hosting you again soon. Until then, keep dreaming fearlessly, and we will see you all next time.